We're going to be working between two tabs, windows, browsers. Everybody's device is a little different, so or two devices, and maybe in some cases, because we're going to have the Meet open where I'm going to kind of guide you and talk a little bit about virtual reality and augmented reality. Then we're going to really have a lot of time to jump in and play with CoSpaces. So CoSpaces is a platform, a virtual reality and augmented reality platform. It's not the only one out there, just one I enjoy using. And I will be upfront about it. There is a paid and a free version of it. The free version is quite limited. So I'm going to get you in as students in my classroom today, because once you sort of log in and connect as a teacher, if you activate like a trial, your trial would start now. So I'm going to give you also a code that gets you a 30-day trial, and that gives you access to the whole platform and everything you can do with it, or the free version is a little bit limited. So I'm going to bring in as students too, just so you can see as well like how it looks like from a teacher-student perspective. So you can see how you can how I can create an assignment and kind of get you going and jump in with that as well. So we're going to have a lot of time to play, and really that's just for you to get your hands on and explore and try things. And I'll be here to answer some questions. So I'm just going to share my screen a little bit here, and just to give you a little bit of information, and then we'll jump in and start playing. So as I do that, for those that don't know me, my name is Mario. I am one of the technology integration leaders in the Halifax Regional Center for Education. And so my role is to support teachers and students with integrating technology in the classroom. So from primary to grade 12, and I have about 45 schools that I work within. When I'm physically in a school, I should say. So I'm kind of here, there, and everywhere when that's happening. The last 3 months, of course, were a little bit different for all of us. So CoSpaces is a great platform, and I've used it probably from grade 4 up. I've tried a little bit with grade 3. Maybe not so much the coding aspect of it, but in terms of building, like, because it's a lot of kind of just click and drag and placing things. So there is possibilities for lower elementary as well. But once kind of grade 4, where they start getting into block coding, because you can do some block coding with it, you can really kind of expand it, and really they can take it to so many different places. So if any of you are on Twitter, you can also tweet using the IT Camp or the Summer Learning Academy hashtags, and love to see anything that you're sharing out there in Twitter world. So a little bit about what CoSpaces is. So CoSpaces, you can do augmented reality and virtual reality. So we're going to probably focus a lot more on virtual reality today, because that's kind of a lot of what you can do within CoSpaces. So virtual reality is really where you're submersing yourself in a virtual world. So whether you could be just looking at a device, you've probably seen like VR headsets, whatever it might be. So you're kind of transplanting yourself in a world that's your 360 around you, is whatever it might be, in space, underwater, and medieval time, whatever it might be, or students creating their own virtual reality worlds. Where augmented reality is, you can actually see your physical real space around you, and on it are layers of augmented reality. So big craze a couple of years ago was Pokemon Go. That's an example of augmented reality, where you can see your physical surroundings, then on it were these, whatever they're called, pokey things that you had to get. I don't know the full details. But one thing with CoSpaces too, you can create sort of a static space where you can see all around you, and you can have a 360 image essentially, where you can look up, down, all around. But you can also integrate coding with CoSpaces. So that allows you to have things move, so you can trigger things. So if you look at a certain object, maybe it starts to move. So you can have characters interact with each other and do different things. So that's where the kind of the coding aspect comes in, where you can kind of really give it a lot of life. With the augmented reality, now I'm presenting my screen, so I can't really see you, but I don't know if you can see this or not in my little window. So with augmented reality, there's something called a merge cube that works with CoSpaces. So this merge cube essentially is, it's augmented reality. So you can take a device, and if you have the CoSpaces app and you hold it in front of the merge cube, you can design where each side something kind of pops out. So you can kind of create like a six-sided sort of story, whatever you might be. You could also create it, because CoSpaces is not limited to just, you know, 1 or 2 or 3 different things. You could have it that when you get to a certain side, it leads to kind of another path or dimension. So your stories the students create can kind of go on and on forever. So this is a merge cube. They sell for about $10 now. There's actual other apps that work with it as well. There's MergeCube apps. Some are free, some are paid. And this is something where they can kind of build as well with that. And you might have a chance to play with that here today as well. So just to kind of talk about, so the good thing about virtual reality, like virtual reality is cool. Put on a headset, you can play a game. There's a lot of video gaming around it. You can transplant yourself in any kind of world. But we kind of want to see our students shift to not just consuming VR, but creating as well. Okay, so that's where something like CoSpaces comes in, where they're not just sort of taking in the content and, you know, there's only so much virtual reality you can watch. I mean, maybe I'm older, but I find I get dizzy after a while looking at that. I actually get dizzy when people have the VR headset and I'm looking at the screen, what they're looking at. I find I just get dizzy looking at that. But where students are creating, so they're developing their own worlds, telling their own stories. We're going to see there's lots of ways you can integrate it in tons of different subjects. And then they could share it with other students. So there are ways that with CoSpace you can share what they create and have students experience each other's worlds. So I'm going to share this slide deck with you. I'm not going to go through and play these videos. So I just have these there as information. So you can kind of go see what different things you can do with virtual reality and augmented reality and CoSpaces. I don't want to take up your time with that because I would rather have us more time to go in and play. So these are just some examples you can do. These are not limited, the only things you can do, but you can tell stories. You can kind of do virtual exhibitions, 360 tours. So you can actually find 360 images, whether you take your own or online. So you can take like an actual real 360 image of, you know, a museum summers, and then you could kind of create stories within that. So you can take anything that's already been created as well. You can develop games, and there's tons of examples you'll have a chance to look at as well. There's like little Jenga games and things like that, and simulations. So there's a lot of things like with physics and chemistry that you can create. There's something in CoSpaces called physics, essentially, where you can kind of have things where they interact. So if like I have a ball that hits another ball, I can have it, you know, the ball move in a certain way and things like that. So they're not just sort of crashing and not doing anything. So there's a whole bunch of things you can do. And again, we won't have time to get through all of it, but I want you to get a taste and a start to what CoSpaces can do today. So like I said, applies to really any curriculum because it's the students creating their virtual reality world. So it could be math related, language arts, coding, social studies. It's really them creating their story. So there's no, it's not specific to any subject, which is really neat. So again, these are just some more examples. So here's an example of a MergeCube book review, and I do have a copy of that. I don't think I have it linked in here. I'll have to share that out as well when I upload my slide deck to the Summer Learning Academy website. There's an online book review where each side students kind of tell a story of a book. So it talks about setting, characters, plot, and so it's in an AR space. So as you kind of move the MergeCube around, you get all the different, you know, kind of the who, what, when, how, all that stuff of a book. So students are using language arts at the same time developing, creating an augmented reality as well. Again, just more examples. Again, more so here for information, and you'll get a chance to kind of jump in and play with that. So we're going to kind of look at the teacher and student side of things. Okay, so CoSpaces works on any device. Only thing is, if you're on a mobile device, you need the app. So you need the CoSpace app, whether you're on a tablet or your phone. Okay, if you're online on a browser, whether Chromebook, laptop, MacBook, it doesn't matter. You're just going to go to the website, and we're going to kind of get to that here this morning. So again, it's great that it works on any device. Today, I'm not really giving you much instruction. My instruction will be for you to kind of jump in and play, so the teacher can kind of go through their lesson. And then one thing with CoSpaces too is it can be students kind of working alone, or they can actually collaborate on a CoSpace. So they can share and kind of work together on a CoSpace, which is kind of neat too as well. So it's not just sort of individuals working on their own. Again, coding, we're going to look at that. And you can actually do block coding and JavaScript. Okay, I'm not a JavaScript professional by any means. But if you have students that are kind of in that realm, especially in high school maybe, or even other grades too, we have a lot of students that are really into coding and have sort of learned a lot. You have sort of two options. And actually with the block coding as well, there's kind of I forget the exact term, but there's like sort of like simple block coding and then sort of the standard block coding. So the simpler one kind of has just sort of basic things where they just get people to move and do different things. So there isn't a whole, it's a great way to start if your students are just kind of getting into block coding. And again, you can get into the virtual reality and augmented reality using headsets and different things like that. And then they could share it with their peers. Again, CoSpaces, creating in virtual reality, augmented reality kind of hits on a lot of those 6 C's like communication, collaboration, creativity, critical thinking, all those great things that we want our students to be doing in the classroom. So you'll kind of see this quickly as you start digging in and developing your space. So what I'm going to do right now is, before I get you to jump in, I don't want you to log in quite yet. I just want to show you a little bit about CoSpaces, and then I'm going to get you into my classroom, and then we can kind of go in and jump in here. So I just want to show you quickly kind of what it looks like. And with the numbers of people we have here today, it should be good if any troubleshooting comes up. This is the first time I've actually done this session online. I'm doing this in classrooms all the time. We're working with teachers in PD. So hopefully we can troubleshoot any issues that come up. So when students kind of come in, what you're going to kind of come in and see, oops, sorry, I should go back a page here. My fault here. Sorry, I'm just going to go back. Do that again. Click too fast here. So when students kind of come in, I'm going to kind of guide you through where to start. But there's options you can do, like creating a 360 3D environment is what we're going to essentially go in, where you have sort of a blank slate, because I want you to kind of pick up and kind of develop what you want. You can do it where there's a 360 image, so it's kind of giving them a little bit of a starting ground. You can kind of upload an image and have that go as their starting point, or you can develop right from the merge cube. Okay, so you might have time to kind of play around with all of them. We're going to kind of start in the 360 image. You can see there's some templates here, like dioramas and things like that, all about me. So students can kind of, at the beginning of the year, they could do an all about me CoSpaces. So you get to learn a little bit more about your students. I'm just going to start with an empty scene. So in CoSpaces, essentially, this is my space, and there's nothing here. It's completely blank. The only thing you'll see is this camera in the middle of the screen. And this is important. Don't delete this camera, okay? You can move it around and place it where you want, but essentially what that camera does is, when you start creating your scene, wherever that camera is pointing, that's the first thing people would see if they were to actually view your VR creation, like in a headset or on a tablet or whatever it might be. So where that's pointing is important. So you can move that later on. So I wouldn't worry about it right away, but just don't delete it. It's a bit of a pain to get it back. But build your scene, and then you just kind of click and drag and move your camera to where you want. If anybody's on a mobile device, like an iPad or tablet or phone, you just use your finger to kind of click and drag it around. So I'm just using my mouse. That is one thing I should mention too, if you're using this with students. So we have, in our area, we have lots of Chromebooks in schools, but we don't have a lot of mice. So students are using the mouse pad to create and control. And I find lower, middle, lower elementary, even the upper elementary side is a little bit tricky without a mouse. So I'm using a mouse, so it's gonna, and if you have a mouse, I find it way more easy to do and create. But essentially what you do is, down the bottom here, you have your library. And this is where you can have all of your assets, all the different things you can bring in to your CoSpaces. All right. So when I click the library, they're sort of divided into categories. So there's characters, there's animals, houses, that sort of buildings you can bring in, whatever it might be. The computer's being a little laggy here. So in characters, I don't know why they're not showing up here. They're being a little laggy. But I can click and drag, and you can't see my characters right now. I can click and drag and bring a character into my scene. There they go. Now they're starting to show up. There we go. So here's my character. Okay. So you'll get a bunch of different buttons and things you can do with the character. So the first thing is I can click and drag and move the character wherever I want. So you notice that I just have a blank slate. I don't really know what I'm going to be kind of developing and creating yet. When you click on it, you get these options here. And these just let you to move. And if you hover over them, it tells you exactly what they do. So this one here says drag to lift. So if I click and drag that, that raises my character. So I might not have this female up in the air, but if you had like a bird or an airplane, you might use that click and lift to kind of place them in the sky. This one lets you scale things, so you'll see as you start bringing in more and more objects, I can click and drag that, and I can change the size of things. Okay, so that's what that does there. So you're just sort of bringing things in, you can adjust them. This one lets you sort of rotate, do different things like that, and this one's translation mode, where you can kind of move it around the screen like I'm doing, clicking and dragging. That's if you just click on it or hover over it. If you double click on a character, an object, whatever it might be, you get a whole lot more options. Okay, and I'll just show you this, then we're going to kind of get you in and start playing here. So you can do a whole bunch of things. If you want to code any of your characters, even if it's an object like a ball, you have to turn coding on for every single object. So that's the one thing with CoSpaces. So when I double click it, I have code here. When I click on code, I have to turn it on. So I just kind of clicking that slider over, because if I don't, I won't be able to code them. So double click, I can turn that on for coding. Each character is given a name. So there's one here is called Fancy Girl. If I bring in another girl of the exact same character type, it would just be called like Fancy Girl 1. So something to keep in mind is you can rename these. Okay, I can just a name if I want to. That's only you only really need to name it is if you have the same object. So sometimes students will have like 3 or 4 dogs in their scene that all look similar, and then it's called dog 1, dog 2, dog 3, dog 4. And when they go to code something, it just shows them as dog 1, 2, 3, or 4, and they forget which dog is which. So sometimes giving it specific names is helpful for that. But anything you do, you can put speech bubbles in. We'll wait to get into physics. That's a little bit trickier there. You can add animations. So when I click animations, you can see I can have them standing or sitting, lying down, whatever it might be. I also have options for reactions. So maybe I'm going to have her cheering. So when I do that, she's kind of in a cheering sort of stance. So anything you bring in, you're going to have, by just double clicking it, different animations. Okay, you can have them do actions. Now you can't do multiple things at the same time. So when I change this to dance, I can't have her cheering and dancing at the same time. Okay, in this part here, when you get into coding, you can kind of play around a little bit with that. But once you pick one, so for example, in my animation, if I have her lying down, there she is there. And then once I go back in, let's say I want her lying down, but I want her to be rowing a boat at the same time, it changes her animation. Okay, so you can't really do 2 things at the same time. So what we're going to get you to do is going to get you into CoSpaces. We're going to kind of go in and I'll get you just kind of get a lay of the land a little bit, and then I'll kind of guide you through about how you can add other objects, how you can attach objects together, how you can change your whole background. So at this point, we're going to kind of have 2 windows open at the same time. So if there's any questions as well, just let me know at this point. But I'm going to share. I'm going to go back to my slide deck here, and these are sort of the steps. Oops, let me present that. So in another tab, another window, device, whatever you want to use, I will get you to kind of follow these steps here once it loads up. So the website is CoSpaces.io. So it's not .com. If you go to Google and Google CoSpaces, it'll probably be what you find up there. So one thing with CoSpaces is there's lots of options to log in. So you could have, I know not everybody, I know somebody said they're here from Thailand, so you might not have Google. I know every part of the world's a little different. You can do a single sign-on with Google, or you can create username and passwords where you don't need an email attached. So it's kind of different for each student, depending on where you're in the world. But what I'd like you to do is if you can go to CoSpaces.io and kind of follow these 6 steps here. And hopefully I've put them in here correctly. But if you have any trouble getting to the point where we want to go, let me know. So you're going to kind of go to the website. On the top right-hand corner, you'll click register, sign up as a student, and the class code is where you have to enter that in. Then it will prompt you to sign in, and hopefully you'll be able to join my class. So I'll leave that up there, and if there are any questions, either put in the chat. if you want to unmute yourself, I know you can do that as well. Whatever works, and between us, we'll get you sorted out here. I'll give you a minute or two just to try to get in there. If you get to the class, there'll be an assignment there. You can actually click on the assignment if you want, and then we'll start kind of going in and playing. Maybe if you're in, maybe pop in the chat, just say I'm good or I'm in or something, just so we can kind of get a sense of where people are at here. Just want to make sure we can all get in. But definitely, if you're not able to get in, let us know, please. We seem to be okay, hopefully. Actually, I can check in my CoSpaces here, and I can see. So in CoSpaces, I can go to my classes, and I can click on IT Camp 2020, and I can see who's logged in here so far. Everybody else okay? There we go. We got more coming in. I'll pop the instructions back up here in case anybody still needs those. Okay, I think we're okay. So I'm just gonna so on your end, so I'm on the teacher side, so yours will look a little different, but I think you should see an assignment that you can kind of go in. There you go. So a lot of you, and so as a teacher, I can click on any one of your CoSpaces and see what you're doing. So just kind of like a lot of apps out there, or Google, things like that, I can kind of see the work you're doing in progress. So I'm just gonna go back to my CoSpaces here. So you can jump in and start playing around here. Couple things I'll just kind of mention. At the top of your page of your CoSpaces Senior Developing, there is a little help button there. So there are some videos and things like that that you can watch up there as well. Down the bottom where you click on Library, as I said, there's lots of items you can bring in. At the top, you'll have undo and redo buttons. If you right click on an object, you can delete it. So if you put something in, it's really not the thing you wanted, you can delete things. You'll notice as well on like any item so if I click characters, there's going to be options to scroll over. So there's a lot more options to look through and pick. Okay. And then also the other one I'll show you right now quickly is the environment. So you can click on your environment, and you can, instead of having this sort of blank grid looking background, I can click on edit, and they have some preset backgrounds that you can pick from. Okay. Depending on what you pick, sometimes you can go into buildings and design inside of buildings, and some you can't. It just kind of varies scene to scene. So, and they don't really tell you when you pick one. But if you pick a background, you don't like it, you can just come back in again and pick another one. So I can click one, and as soon as I click it, you'll notice my scene changes here. Okay. So I'll give you a minute or two to start playing, and then just start trying to bring in some characters. Then we'll look at ways you can attach objects together, and then kind of really start developing your scene. And then we'll look at some of the coding stuff too, because that'll be another aspect we want to look at. All right, and I'll be here to answer any questions you might have. If you're using your mouse, just scrolling front and back lets you kind of zoom in, zoom out. If you click on an object and hit V, it kind of lets you zoom in as well. So you have to click on the object first. Or using 2 fingers on your mouse pad as well lets you zoom in, zoom out. So don't mind me if I'm talking and doing things. It doesn't mean you have to do what I'm doing, but just because we're recording, I want to sort of talk through the recording and just show things. So you don't have to follow exactly what I'm doing. If you want to explore on your own and try things, go for it. I'm just going to show different things every now and then. So I'm just playing around with the different actions of my characters. Again, you can bring in animals. And at any time you're just curious what your scene looks like, at the top right, there's a play button. So you can click the play button. And if somebody were to view this in VR, this is what they would see right now. So I just have 2 characters, one's dancing and one, I think I picked angry expression or something. Yeah, she looks pretty angry. So again, I have my camera pointing this way, so that's why people see this first. But they would essentially be able to look all around the scene, up, down, 360, any direction, and take in anything I've created. So right now I just have these 2 characters, and then I'm going to start developing some more. So there's a little back button at the top left, which brings me back into my creation mode. All right, I'll give you another minute or two. I'm going to show you about kind of attaching objects so your characters can be interacting with different things. So I'm going to bring in an item here. You probably notice too, depending on the character you select, if you've selected characters or animals, whatever it might be, their animations vary character to character or animal to animal. So like for the dog, you probably have an action that it'll chase its tail, but if you have a mouse, you wouldn't have that option. You might have, I don't know, something else in there. So not everyone does the same animations. Same with characters. Like if you find like there's the witch, I think there's one where she can cast a spell, or there's a pirate and you'll see an action to swing its sword or attack or something like that. They're all a little bit different. going to bring one more character in here. All right, if I can just get you to pause for 1 second from your CoSpaces and just come back over to the Google Meet. I just want to show a couple things and let you kind of jump back in it here. So just to make sure, just want to show a few things, and you might have already discovered these anyways, but I just want to take a minute or two. I don't want to take up too much of your time here and let you get back into playing. So I have a scene going on that my scene does not make sense, but I purposely just wanted to bring in a variety of different characters and different things they can do. A couple things you might have noticed. So when you double click on a character, we looked at animation, but there's also an option here for material. So material just lets you customize the person a little bit. So you can change their hair color, skin tone, shirt color, whatever you want to do. So you can customize those a little bit. So when I pick those, I've changed her outfit. Okay, so the skin tones are great as well, just to sort of be more reflective and diverse in what we create here. So it's great that those options are in there as well. Another thing I want to show is the attach option. So you notice I have a wooden spoon here. Okay, just kind of sitting there randomly. So if I double click on my wooden spoon, so what I want to, object you want to attach, you have to double click on that object. And I'm just going to click here on attach. And now when I click attach, you notice there's all these little blue dots. So I can click on any blue dot and it will attach that spoon to that object. So some of them wouldn't make sense. Eyes, like I don't know why there'd be a wooden spoon across your eyes, but if there was an object like a binoculars or something, or glasses, that would make more sense. Okay, so wherever I want to attach it, so if I wanted to, you know, it says hand L, I can click on that, and then now she's holding it there. Okay, so the way she's holding her hand is sideways, so maybe I don't like that, so I can do the same thing again. I can detach that, and then I could attach it to somewhere else. So there you go. So now she's holding it up like that. So anytime you see an object, you can double click on that object and attach it. And then once again, if I hit play, here's my scene so far. She's dancing with a spoon. She's angry, and the knight's not really doing anything. So I haven't given him any action yet. And just the one thing before I let you go back and play, don't forget as well, if I double click, I got to turn coding on. But just because she's holding that spoon, if I want the spoon to do things as well, I have to go in and actually turn on the coding for the spoon. So even if they're attached, you have to like turn on for every single object. So I just had a habit, I always tell students to turn on for everything. Like even the flower probably not going to move, but good idea just to turn the coding on in case. All right, so I'll let you jump back in there, and then we'll look at a couple of things as well. So just remember to turn your coding on. And again, and if you don't like the environment, you can go back and change that. There's also a section called building in the library. So at times if there's structures or things that aren't available in the assets, students can kind of create their own as well. Go back here. All right, I'll show a couple other things in a minute or two here. All right, sorry to interrupt again. Just so much I want to show you in so little time. So if you want to just pop back over to the meet, I just want to show a couple of little things. And I want to just show the coding and then again give you a time to play because we're down to a little less than 20 minutes here. A couple little things I just want to highlight here. Now you're sort of developing your scene. I haven't actually gone into the teacher side of it. I could actually go in and see how far you've come along, but I'm not assessing you in any way, but I might sort of take a peek there. I did mention this earlier. So you're building a VR scene here. So here's my whole scene, but maybe I don't want my creation just to be here. So I could have it go over multiple scenes. So over on the left, now this is kind of gets in the coding a little bit. But as you notice, I have my scene 1, and this is my scene going on here. I can add more scenes. So I could have it that maybe when they get to a certain part of my screen, if there's like a little path or they get to a certain tree or something, whatever it might be, that I could code it to kind of go to scene 2. And I mention this because and I'll kind of just pop up to the home screen for a bit. There's actually a gallery here on the home screen that have examples of ones that people have uploaded. And so there's even like one here called a VR adventure game. So this is an example where somebody uses multiple scenes when they get to a certain part. It's kind of like an escape room a little bit as well. So when you get to a certain part of a room or wherever the environment you're in, you get to that point, you go to a new scene. So you can kind of make it more dynamic where, especially if they're sort of doing some storytelling, they can kind of go from one part of the scene and then continue on and move along to another scene, another setting, whatever the story might take place. So I just want to show you that there as well. A couple other things in the environment section. You'll notice that you can put floor images in. So this just allows you to put images on the ground here. I don't have anything handy, I don't think. But I do find this comes into play a little bit if you're doing something with water. I find there's no, unless there's been an update and I just missed it, there's no like, if I want to just do a pond, there hasn't been, or a lake or something. I don't want the whole ground to be water. There isn't one to add in there. So sometimes adding a floor scene. So if I find a picture of a lake, I can kind of put it into my scene. In the library as well, sorry, I'm going to go to upload here. In the upload section, okay, again, another way to add another layer of storytelling. Students can record in here as well, so they can tell their story a little bit too. You can have your characters do speech bubbles, okay, or you can add voice as well. You can also upload sound files as well if they have them saved, on their desktop or in Google Drive, whatever it might be. So there's other images and videos that you can bring in here as well. So sort of different layers of things you can add in. The last thing I want to show you is the coding, okay? So I want to show you just how to do that. And again, in the final 15 minutes, I'm just going to let you play. Then I'll show you how you can kind of get your students up and running if you want to try this as well. before our time runs out here. So again, as I mentioned, whatever you pick, you got to make sure you turn your coding on. Okay, so I have the coding on there. And then I'm going to click at the top right that says code. So when you do code, you have options for the code blocks, which is block coding, or script. Okay, so I'm going to go to code blocks for myself. Okay, and if you've done a little bit of block coding, your students have done a little bit of block coding, this will look quite familiar. But you can pick, if you're familiar with JavaScript, you can sort of go into that as well. You'll notice I'm kind of on a split screen between my scene and the coding. I can enlarge that if I want to, if I just want to focus on the coding right now. So with coding, basically you need sort of an event, a trigger to get things going. So in this case, there's one here, and there's different events that I can pick from. Okay, you can have it when you press play. You can have it when you hover over an object. So it all depends, I guess, on your scene, or when you click on a specific object, something will happen. But I'll just have it when things play. What do I want them to do? Okay, so let's, for example, in my scene, when I click play, I have an option here. So you see it says move knight 1 meter forward in 1 second. As long as I have my coding turned on for every object, you notice now I could pick any person I want or anything. I could actually have the spoon move if I wanted to. Let's say she was throwing it or something. So I'm going to pick Roman girl. I'll pick Roman girl because I didn't change the name. That's what she's called. When I sort of play my scene, she's going to move forward, and I could indicate, oops, forward how many meters I want her to go. So let's say I want her to go, I don't know, 7 meters. In 1 second, that might be pretty quick. I'm going to change that, say 3 seconds. So basically, I have a pretty simple 2 lines of code. When I press play on my scene, Roman girl is going to move forward 7 meters in 3 seconds. So I'm just going to click over here where it says play. And you notice Roman girl took off. Okay. Now, you might have noticed as well, I'm going to kind of go back for a sec here, is when she walked, sorry, it's going to go back. I'm going to pull my camera back a little bit more here so you can kind of get a better view of it. So when I press play again, you notice she walks, but her feet don't really move, okay? Looks like she's just sort of gliding across the ground. That's because of the animation I picked, okay? So you might have to play a little bit around with that. So because I picked talk angry, okay, I could have her kind of walk, click walk as the object. So then now when I press play, it's a little bit more natural look. You see she's walking now. So depending on what you picked, and she still kind of continues to walk. Depending on what you picked, you might have to change the actions of your characters a little bit. So that's all in the code. I'm just going to go back here. So again, you can, as long as you have coding turned on, you can decide what you want people to move. So transform are the movement objects. Okay, so they can move forward, backward. You can have things move in sort of along a grid. So like XYZ axis. So if something was flying, so maybe it's starting on the ground and moving, flying up in the air diagonally, you might adjust the path that they go in. Anything you don't need, if you just sort of start clicking it, there's a trash can there. You can trash it there. Then there's different things like actions. Okay, so I can have, you know, the Roman girl will start walking and the knight will say hi. So there's all different things you can do. You can have code going in different ways. You'll see controls. So these are things like repeat functions if you need things to repeat. There's also something called parallel blocks. Where is that at there? It's in here somewhere. So you can have things run parallel at the same time. So if I wanted the Roman girl and the knight to walk at the same time, you could have like if-then type statements. So if, you know, when the girl starts walking, then the knight will say hello. So you can have things not happen at the same time. So there's a whole bunch of different coding options here. And it takes a little bit of playing around to get things to work. But anything you don't like, just go over and trash it there. Okay. So we have about 10 minutes left. I'll let you kind of keep playing. Anytime you want to ask a question, ask the question. I'm here and I'll help you as best I can. And then in the last 2 minutes, I just kind of want to show you sort of some next steps if you want to sort of take this to your classroom or work with others. But again, any questions, feel free to pop them in the chat and we'll get them answered for you. I'll just take a peek over here as well. Okay. So far, so good, I think. So I might be a little nosy and just peek around here a little bit. I won't go in and look specifically at your things, but just seeing it. Looks like people have a variety of things going on here. I will mention too, as you're working there, so a lot of times anything in the gallery here, if I hover over it, there'll be a button here called can be remixed. So you can take any of these creations. So somebody created like a Jenga game, I could actually copy it and save it on my account, and then I can play around with it. And sometimes I do that if it's a really unique code that I found they developed that, wow, that's really cool how they had, let me just go into this one, how they had different objects interact with each other. And I just want to get the code from that. So it kind of saves me a little bit of work, and I can kind of see the back end of things, how they developed it. So you see there's like a maze game where you kind of tilt and move around. You get a ball through a maze. So there's a lot of great creations there. So here's another one here as well, like kind of like the physics here is where you kind of hit a board and it'll kind of do a domino effect. So that takes a lot of coding and the physics as well. So there's a lot of neat little things in here. And if you can, where it says can be remixed, you can grab it, make a copy of it, and kind of play around with it and tinker with it as well. So that's kind of a neat thing too as well when people share their creations. So again, there's tons of examples here. Oops. So we are getting into the last sort of 5 minute of things here. So I just want to make sure I cover all my bases, but again, I'll stick around if there are any questions. Just in terms of some next steps. So as I mentioned, so we didn't even really get into the merge cube and augmented reality, but you can do that. So the free version, if you were to just sign in, you wouldn't get access to that. So there are 30-day trials. You can kind of get full access up to 100 seats. So you can use this access code. It's just COS Mario EL. So that'll get you 30 days of access to the whole platform for up to 100 users. But kind of take note of that code if you want, and especially if you might not be, if you're in the classroom, you might not be teaching currently at the moment until the fall, so you might kind of want to save that till you're ready to use it. So just kind of you can kind of note that code and be able to use it down the road, depending on which regional center you're from. If you're from a regional center, so like in CCRCE, HRCE, AVRC, we had subscriptions last year. We're still kind of not sure what things are going to look like yet in the fall, but we did have subscriptions last year for teachers and students. So talk to your contact in your regional center, your technology mentor, and they can kind of direct you into what they have in terms of platform access. So that is something we're going to look at doing again this year. I think we're just going to kind of wait to see how things play out a little bit in the fall first. So that's options there as well. So I don't know if there are any other questions or not, but I'll kind of put it out there if anybody has any questions, whether it's CoSpaces related or not. Hopefully you had a chance to play around and see what it's about. Again, so much more that we could have done just in terms of the time. So it's really where the students take it. It's really no limit to what they can build and create.